What's going on, guys? It's Ben Runyan again here for AudioSkills.com. Today, I'm going to talk about EQ, equalization, big question in digital music production and really all DAWs, Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, etc. So I haven't really decided if I want to split this video into two or if we can get done most of the concepts today. But this is actually something I've been talking about with my students at the different universities I teach at lately. And I think it's a question that everyone has, but not everyone really knows how to ask it. So let's start with the basics today. I want to go through the several different curves that there are in equalization. And I want to start with something called the Lowcut. So let's talk about this EQ here in Logic. Now, Logic's channel EQ has a low cut, a low shelf, a parametric bell, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. It's got a high shelf and a high cut. So 1 and 2 are basically the opposite of each other. 3 and 4 are the opposite of each other. And then these are all exactly alike. So one of the first things you'll notice about this channel EQ that is in fact on the master channel is that I have it as a low cut at around 35.5 hertz. And a lot of people ask me, why do I do this? Generally speaking, most of the frequencies below that are kind of just sonic mess. That's not true of all genres necessarily, maybe not trap or all hip hop, but for the most part, you don't need the frequencies below that. And to illustrate, I just kind of want to play some of the track. This is a track that if you've watched my videos, you've heard probably. So why don't I go ahead and play it? And I want to sweep this frequency from 0 up to 30. And let's see if you can even tell any difference as far as hearing bass drop out.
To my heart, to my heart.
So around maybe 45, 50 hertz, you actually began to hear some of that bass actually drop out. Before that, you really didn't hear it at all. So it was very interesting, for me to figure that out early on and kind of have that reaffirmed from people that are very smart in digital music and teachers, that really below that, in cutting that, you're actually allowing your whole mix to breathe. So along those lines and going further with the concept of the low cut, a low cut is used to roll off low end. This could be over an entire mix like we just discussed. This could be in a group channel with like instruments, or it could be on an individual channel. Most sounds beside the bass line, the kick, the snare, and maybe some of the other meaty elements at the bottom. Maybe if you have, a sub bass, a mid bass, and a top bass, most of these things can have a cut really below the 130 hertz range to give that separation to the rest of the mix. The low cut's an extremely important tool. Now, along the lines of the low cut, and you can see it activating and turning off here, you also have the decibel level of the cut, with 6 dB being a lower one here and 48 dB being a higher one here. Now, certain equalizers, for instance, the FabFilter Pro Q, can cut up to 96K, which is almost a 90-degree angle cut. So, in life, there's really no such thing as a hard cut. So it is a digital representation or a digital replication, or really just something that's completely new and I don't want to say fake, but artificial inside of a digital audio workstation. So that's what a low cut's for. So for instance, if we listen to the bass range here, you're seeing a different cut there. But let's say we go to the Vox here.
To my heart, to my heart.
Chances are that below 130, I can just roll this off.
To my heart, to my heart.
And if you look at the frequency analyzer here, now I'm specifically on this track at the moment. Below, for instance, 360 hertz, in this case, there's really nothing there. So let's go ahead and let's look at the just regular Vox as well.
Heart, 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 heart.
If I look at the frequency analyzer, I'm really only seeing stuff around 210 maybe. So let's roll up to here. So So as you can see, not all frequencies really have to have, or really not all instruments or sounds need to have frequencies present below a certain level. In fact, they're just contributing to the noise floor and they're not really offering anything positive to us in the mix. So that's a low cut. Let's go a little bit forward and let's talk about the low shelf. Now, a good example of this would be this right here, and I'm going to come to it in a second. So a low shelf can often be used for a boost in a bass section, or a drum kit, or a bass line, or something that needs some sort of thickness on the low end. And this can be a low boost or a low cut, depending on if you're trying to boost or cut. So often this is something that can be applied across a whole kit for an extra boost on a drum kit. A low shelf boost on the kick, for instance, can give you some of that nice extra oomph on the bottom end. But you have to be very, very careful about how you use it, though, as raising the gain severely in the bass sections can create some serious frequency overlap with actual bass sounds. So, for instance, on the drop here, I did a low shelf boost. As you can see here. Oh, wait, no, I lied. So I actually used parametric EQ, but I'll get to in a second. But for instance, I could have used a low shelf. So let's listen to it as is. But I'm also going to pair that with a little low cut because I don't want to boost all that low sonic stuff, just kind of around the, let's say 30 to 100 range. Great, now that sounds pretty good. I got a little bit more oomph out of that kick. And it also boosted my bass line a little bit. However, the fact that they sound so good in the first place is really more a element of sound selection. So the kick in this case is sitting above the bass line, and the bass line is a sub below. So I didn't have to do too much EQ there. So a low shelf can be used to boost or cut a certain element. So I don't do a lot of cutting with low shelves. And the reason why I don't do that is, generally speaking, a low shelf is not super surgical. It's very broad, whereas a low cut is very surgical. So I tend to be pretty careful about my boosts or my cuts with a shelf, considering how broad they can be. Generally speaking, when I'm doing a severe cut on a low end, it's probably going to be a low cut instead of a low shelf. Moving forward to the most important EQ curve that probably exists, and that is the parametric bell. And I'm trying to figure out a good way to show you how I can demonstrate that. So I'll probably use the Vox here. Now let's circle this here.
Play these games. I know you can be me.
But actually, before we go forward, you can already hear something that I don't like. It's starting to sound a little chunky on that low end.
Can be me.
So I'm going to erase what I did here and what I did here, because I feel like that low shelf was way too exaggerating. Kind of like I had said before, but I went ahead just to demonstrate it. Now, previously there I'd had the parametric bell, so let's listen again.
Can be me. Can be me.
Now, the reason why that sounded so chunky is because I have this EQ across this entire group, and this group contains the drum, the kick drum, the bass line as well. And in pushing the low shelf, I not only boosted the kick drum, but also the bass at the same time, kind of creating this muddy section. Now, the reason why that happened is because both sub-elements of the kick and the bass existed down here in this territory. Whereas before, I had a parametric bell that was much more surgical, and I had to boot this boosted around where the kick is.
Can be mean, you scare me once, but you never can be mean, you scare me once, but you never see a boy.
That sounds a lot better, it's a lot cleaner. There's none of that warble on the low end. So in this case, I use a parametric bell to boost. But generally speaking, I believe that parametric bells are mostly used in a subtractive capacity. Yes, you can always use a parametric bell to get a little bit more out of your kick drum in the low end. I think that's a positive use of it. And maybe even a little bit out of a vocal sound. But more often than not, you're using it in a subtractive capacity to get something out of a sound. So, for instance, I could apply, and I already do have an EQ applied across the entire mix. Now, people always say, how do you know which frequencies to cut? Now, right now, I'm pretty happy with this mix. I'm not too concerned about where it's at right now. But let's just say, for instance, that all mixes have something that they could probably work on. Let's try to find something. So I'm going to click on my channel EQ, which is across the whole mix right now. Now, I have a patented rule that I learned from others, and that is boost first, make it worse first. Boost first to find what it is that you don't like, and then get surgical with cutting it. So for instance, I'm just going to sweep the frequency spectrum until I find the frequencies that are really, really ugly.
To my heart, to my heart.
So there's clearly some stuff in there that's a little bit nasty, but it's not too bad. I did a pretty good job mixing it. So let's try to get a little more specific. I'm going to close my cue here, and I'm going to sweep again.
To my heart, to my heart.
Now that I found it, I'm going to cut.
To my heart,
I also think over the entire mix, I think I could use a little boost around that kick range.
to my heart,
To compensate a little bit for my cut, I'm going to use the high shelf, which I do use a lot in an additive capacity. So make up for a little bit of that lost high frequencies by getting a little bit of crisp out of the top end of the drums.
to my heart, to my heart. To my heart, to my heart.
Off.
To my heart, to my heart.
Again, very subtle and not broad strokes. That's the cue. That's the idea here. That's the cue, right? It is the cue. That's the idea here with EQ. If your EQ, looks freaking ridiculous, there's probably something wrong that you did with the sound, or you're the best engineer of all time and you've made some ridiculously, epic boost or cut that's saving your mix.
To my heart, to my heart.
Sounds pretty good. I'm going to stop here for today. We have a lot more pro tips to talk about as it pertains to EQ, and I'm going to tackle that in the next week's video as a part 2 of this EQ series. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Go ahead and bash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on AudioSkills.com, and if you want to check me out at benrunyan.com, BenRunyan.com for more info on me. Take care. Talk soon.